Sales is always involved. How you position yourself, how you position your thoughts, your thinking really matters. It doesn't matter what function you're in or what level you are, you're always selling an idea, a notion, a concept to somebody to change their heart and mind.
Even great leaders get stuck. Others thrive. I'm Mark Cook, New York Times bestselling author, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. Clients upgrade leaders' retreats and conferences with my 5-star keynotes and breakouts on leaders' bold encounters. Also, leaders get weekly consulting as they execute key steps. Plus, brief check-ins guarantee results, live or via Zoom. After turnarounds as chief executive and 9 global studies of 2 million award-winning leaders, I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands with my approach in over 50 cities worldwide. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Leaders create revenue breakthroughs and clients see new profits. Now let's lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome. Today I'm excited to have with me Mark Paul, the president of Stryker Neurovascular. In fact, we're here at his division in Salt Lake City. How are you, Mark?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. I want to start with your personal career story. You have a very interesting early start to your career. Like most people, you hit a time where you needed to change directions, and I'd love you to start just before that, how life was great, and then what that inciting incident was that changed your trajectory.
Well, you could probably start when I was a college student. My ambition was to become an attorney, and as I was working on graduating, I had the opportunity to work with many university attorneys on campus. And after seeing what they did all day, I realized that is exactly what I did not want to do for my career. So here I am, my senior year, a little panicked. But Procter & Gamble came on campus, and I talked to them, and they recruited me to join their sales ranks and later to go into some field marketing. And but I remember asking them, like, what do you do exactly in sales? I know you sell something, but how do you do that? And they said, don't worry, we'll train you. So I had this complete kind of midlife crisis my senior year and shifted completely to something different than I intended. But that shifting was a really good decision, because if I would have stayed on that trajectory path, I would have certainly become an attorney. I just don't know if I would have been very happy doing it. And I found other things that were more enjoyable to me, that were more mission-based.
Yeah. Well, and I love the other part of that moment in your life where, talk to us a little bit about what you studied and how that should matter a ton or not in someone's long-term career. And then you had a personal incident that kind of changed your trajectory as well and gave you new motivation. Tell us about that.
You know, I later learned in my career that I was very mission-oriented in the purpose of my company. But as a young college graduate, I didn't really understand that yet. I was so grateful to have a job. And Procter & Gamble is one of the best companies on earth. It still is. I still follow everything they do. And I had a great career. About 5 years in, we had our first child. And that first child had to be delivered through an emergency C-section. And I had never been in an OR environment. In fact, I don't think I liked hospitals. They were, I didn't know how to digest what happened in there. There's people that were born, there's people that died. They smelled funny. I just didn't enjoy going into the hospital environment. That's completely different today. I love that environment. But I watched my first son be born as an emergency C-section. I was not a very good minder. They put you behind this blue curtain with your wife's head and the anesthesiologist, and I stood up and watched that procedure, and I asked a ton of questions. And the doctor was great. He gave me full anatomy lessons of what was happening, what he was doing, his technique. My wife was mortified. I must say that she was a labor and delivery nurse, and this was her team. I really embarrassed her. But I was so excited by what I saw that I decided to change my career once again, but now it was based on a different sort of feeling. It was mission-based. And I loved working for Procter & Gamble, but I can tell you what, in the medical device world where I eventually landed, saving someone's leg from amputation, saving someone from having a heart attack, saving someone from having a stroke was very different in how it felt than shipping 40 truckloads of Tide. It's a great product.
Yeah.
I use it every day. It's a
great
fantastic.
product.
P&G remains
Saves water, yeah.
one of the best companies on earth, and the volumes were massive, and the products were amazing. The talent at P&G is just incredible. But I found out what I needed for me was something around mission and helping people relieve suffering.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to follow that mission in your story. I want to stop for just a minute before we leave Procter & Gamble, because I do admire that company, and I found out something that was very interesting in some of my work, and I want to get your personal perspective on it. So one of the problem solving, when people are leading teams and companies down a path, taking specific steps over a given time, depending on their industry, they always hit some problems, always. And so they need advanced problem solving. And one of the problem solvings we discovered was a lighter version of ethnography sometimes. People getting out in the field, and one of the former CEOs of P&G used to go out in the field, and the very first thing he expected was to be in a homemaker's home watching him or her do some laundry and clean the living room, etc. Do you have any personal awareness of stories or experience with something like that, going in there?
P&G, all those stories are true. P&G is amazing that way. I remember going to the secret diaper testing facility in a state I won't name. And they were testing out new diapers for boys and girls. And these guys had lab coats on. The little babies were crawling around playing. And they had tight blue suits on and tight pink suits on. And all the parents were sitting around the room. The babies had little numbers on their back, and they were waiting for leaks. And when they'd have a leak, they would scoop up that baby and they would study in the design of the product where that leak was. That's how P&G how Procter & Gamble was so good at what they did. So it didn't matter if it was a cleaning product, a paper product, a food product. They knew the customer better than the customer knew themselves. And all those skills that I learned and trained on at Procter & Gamble completely transitioned over to the medical device world. In understanding deeply what that patient needed and what the doctor needed. Everything from how the product shipped, to how it was opened, how it was used, to how it was disposed. We know everything deeply, and we do that by watching thousands of cases.
So you were exposed to some of this thinking, or you were born and belonged there, and you had this sense of curiosity within getting boldly immersed in customers' lives and problems and solutions, and it kind of carried into that C-section, it seems like.
Totally did. Everyone at Procter & Gamble starts at those lower levels, so you totally understand how the product is being used and how it moves through the grocery store system into the patient's hands, or into the consumer's hands. It's no different. All those basic skills and the principles are still true when it applies to medical care.
Yeah. So you told your wife's nursing team, look, this is what the greats do. We get in there and we boldly immerse and understand everything. I'm sorry, but I need to know. So what happens next? You move on, and tell us about that early part of your career and going to work each day in a new type of a role.
Yeah, after that procedure was done, this was before the internet, and I was a little struck on how do you make connections with medical device companies. That a recruiter had called and said, hey, I'm calling from Boston Scientific. We want to talk to you about a sales position. I said, I've just been waiting for the call. So I did that day in the field. I was so excited to go work for Boston Scientific. Nothing negative about Procter & Gamble. Fabulous company, fabulous people. I just needed that mission in my life. And I started in the peripheral vascular world. And I can tell you very significantly, when I was being trained and we saved this patient's life, that night driving home felt so much different. Being a part of that team that helped a patient who was suffering changed everything for me. And I realized that I was a mission-driven person, but I still had to succeed within this new world. I left one universe, Procter & Gamble, and I entered into a medical device world with Boston Scientific that was a completely different universe. And I had to start out, gave up my management level job, started up as a sales rep with a 6-month lease. You either had to succeed or you were out. And I had to hustle, I had to work hard. And it was a whole new world of language, a new world of anatomy, procedures, technique. You have to learn all that very, very rapidly. I couldn't get enough of it. but it had nothing to do with my college education. Nothing. I really believe it's up to our own curiosity, our own drive, our own passion, and let that drive you to achieve different things throughout your career. Those same principles drive me today.
Yeah. Well, I did witness a little bit of you in college. You know, we overlapped, and so I've got to ask you about this in that stage of your career. So nothing to do with your degree. You did learn to write and communicate a bit, I think, in your degree. But more importantly, in your experience in college, I watched you become an expert social engager. You were very much a connector and very interested in people and their lives and such. So tell me about the role that switching into this new world and doing this new job with a 6-month leash, how it relied on your ability to meet new people and have bold encounters that way.
You know, I also discovered along the life's path, I love being with people. I'm energized by being with people. I'm energized by being with my neurosurgeons. I'm energized by being with my teams, whether they be in Cork, Ireland, or Fremont, California, or here in Salt Lake City. I'm energized by being with my sales teams. So I like that human connection. So that human connection is really powerful when you start to connect hearts and minds and mission together. It can become quite a driving force in not only your own personal behavior, but how organizations work and how teams work. So I learned when I was student body president at the University of Utah how to get along with people who are different than myself, how to love people who are very different than myself, truly enjoy being with them, working with them, solving the challenges of our times together. I love that. And that was all those skills that I learned all took place outside of the classroom. All of those skills are the skills that helped me at Procter & Gamble, that helped me transition to Boston Scientific, and fueled me to become a division president at Stryker Neurovascular.
Well, you have cadavers upstairs, so I'm going to dissect that statement a little bit. So it's great that you loved and you got energized by people, but if you had to, if I put some pressure on you and you give me a step-by-step, like how do you meet someone new? How do you engage them and get to know them better and begin the development of a relationship?
Well, it's certainly changed over the years, I'm sure. I'm always very curious where people are from, and I've always been that way. So at Stryker Neurovascular, we have teams in 70 countries. I have customers in 70 countries. I'm always meeting new people from different lands with different languages, different perspectives, different cultures. One of my favorite things to do is to talk about with each of them, whether they be an employee or a customer, genuinely, where did you grow up? What was it like when you grew up? When you went to Sunday dinner or Saturday dinner with your grandmother and your family, you went to your grandparents' home, what did you eat? And that's actually one of my favorite questions because they describe something that's so amazing and so personal. You can see their body language change. And I genuinely care. In fact, I'll say, hey, can I get that recipe? And I like food, I'm a healthy eater. But it's just a way to connect, genuinely connect. And then I would share the same with me. And you kind of have this bond of what it was like, whether you're from Japan or whether you're from Germany or from Morocco or you're from Oklahoma. We're human beings and we have these families and we connect through these families. And in a way, I felt like I was like a fly on the wall. I got to be a part of their family that Saturday afternoon or that Sunday afternoon and really experience this neat thing that happens within their culture. Afterwards, I have this immense appreciation. And whether I see something on TV or read something in the news that connected back to that world, I send it to them in a text or an email and just said, hey, thinking about you, thought about our conversation, saw this today, thought you'd find it interesting. So, and then my other just true passion in life is once I make a friend, it doesn't matter what generation they're from, I meet people with the intent of being their friend for life. Wow. So I don't look at my employees, I look at them and as colleagues, and I look at their families on the other side of them as extension employees. But I intend to be their friend for the rest of our lives. So I don't think of relationships or my employees in a disposable or short-term way. I look at it as a long-term investment into that relationship. I'll stay their friend forever.
That's remarkable. So as you approach another human being or encounter them, you just plan on being friends forever.
Forever.
And it changes the whole dynamic of
Changes
what
everything.
happens.
You think differently, you behave differently, what you're demonstrating is, in the end of the day, you care. You genuinely care because you're going to be friends forever.
And so it's not a transaction ever. So it's not a coworker.
Friendships are not like the DMV, or they should not be. And your colleagues at work, you should develop best friends at work. It's fantastic. In fact, why not? You're with your coworkers oftentimes more than you are with your actual family and friends of your past. So I'm one of those people that loves to develop best friends at work. And it makes it a rewarding work experience.
Interesting. Well, okay, so let's go to the next phase. So you made your 6 months, apparently.
Yep, worked out.
Tell us what happened from there.
Well, I fell in love with procedures. I fell in love with medical devices. I fell in love with the process of medical teams that have dedicated their lives to help people who are suffering from that disease. And I'm grateful for those people that put in 10, 15, 20, 30 years of expertise to help another human being who's suffering. And my world has always been primarily vascular, peripheral vascular cardiology and neurovascular for the most of it. But when I meet my colleagues that do hips and knees and spines and shoulders, they have that same passion, and so do their physicians they work with. So how we kind of work is you have to have that patient first in your mind in every single thing we do. That patient is the most important thing. And we work back from that on the industry side, but so does our customer, so does the surgeon. So when we come together, we're both thinking the same way as how do we relieve suffering, or in our case, save a patient's life? How do we do that together? The doctor can't save that patient's life without the tools that we make. We can't do what we need to do as a company without making the right tools for them. So it becomes a very, very close relationship in making sure we're making the right tools.
So patient focused, always.
Always.
Terrific. So let me ask you this. You say a lot of words that would scare a normal English major. So there was some learning. Had some serious learning that had to take place.
Yeah.
So describe the process and how you approached it in as much detail as you can. Like, how did you learn so much?
I'm very curious by nature. Even when I was in that first OR setting, you don't know if you're going to pass out or throw up or how you're going to react in that. I was totally intrigued by it. So I think you have to be driven first by curiosity. And I think what you'll find is your college degree, regardless of what the topic is, it teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to break down a new element of learning and put it back together in the form of a paper or a test. But at the end of the day, you're actually learning the process of learning. That's what you should be doing. Now, some degrees are certainly geared towards accounting or nursing or engineering, or very specific. But majority of degrees are very generic and very high level. So you have to learn how to transfer the ability to learn new things and be excited about it and apply it to your new career and to new jobs and new opportunities. So I worry that too many people narrow their life and narrow their opportunities because they based it on a college degree that they earned decades ago. But what they learned in those decades is more valuable to me as a division president than their college degree was 20 years ago, by far. So within my organization, I move people around all the time. And I'll move someone from clinical to marketing, and from marketing to training, and from R&D to quality. We move people around all the time because they want to grow and they want to develop and learn new things. What I learned personally is trust yourself and you can learn new things. Of course you can. It's okay to learn a new language and to learn about a procedure and the anatomy, but you're doing it with the view of being a part of that mission, a part of that purpose to save that patient's life. So your learning is very, very different.
It's terrific. What after you started learning this and you were succeeding in sales, what was the next phase of your success as you started to build this?
I wanted to do more than just sales in my career. I wanted to, I believed I had the skills and ambition to do more in my life than to stick in one, say, function of, say, sales. So I raised my hand to be promoted into marketing. and moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and started out as an associate product manager. And again, the same thing, curiosity, learn everything you can about the customer, everything about the procedure and the product, and deliver on those results. At the end of the day, even if you have a ton of passion and curiosity, it's still a meritocracy. You have to perform. But when you can get all those things working together, doors for your career emerge. And then you take that next door, and you take the next door, and the next door. But the methodology is still the same. You dive in, you become passionate about your product, the procedure, the product, and deliver on the results. And then soon you're managing a group of product managers, and then you're the director of marketing. And then they'll say, hey, why don't we move you to Europe? And move over to Europe and lead our team over there. And you're like, fantastic. Sounds great. I want to do it. And it just kind of kept going. Then when I came back, they're like, hey, why don't you lead marketing for international, for all divisions? And loved it. So as you go along through your life, you're building eclectically all these experiences and passions, and you just keep reapplying those core skills. But along the way, you learn from great leaders along the way. You go through additional training along the way. You should seek development at every opportunity you can, because it always pays off down the road.
So when you're pretty successful from the start at everything you did, but you were always working and learning and curious. Would you say that most of the time you were raising your hand saying, sure, I'll go to Europe? Or were you finding the 3 collaborative executives to sell on letting you go to Europe, or the equivalent throughout that second part of your career?
You know, I took an interesting strategy when I went into marketing. I had the choice to take the number 1 product in the company with the highest share, with the highest revenues, or I could take a set of products for drainage, catheters, and biopsy that no one wanted. Sales were low, share was low. As I thought through it, I thought, well, the number 1 product already has a high share. It's going to be hard to take it higher. It's, you know, how do you grow something over there? How do you change it? It's already mature. So I took the group of products that no one wanted: pus, urine, bile. And I never had any intention as an English major someday in college managing bodily liquids. But man, I learned a lot. But I made it cool. We came up with some new products. I came up with a name that was very, very creative. We came up with a look. I picked colors. I came up with a term called catheter calisthenics, so we could put the product to the test with the doctor. I got the doctor to interact with the product long before it went into a patient. It was so durable. I would have the salespeople put it under their chair and have them roll their chair back and forth over it, close it in and out of the drawer, and then look at it and say, that catheter looks brand new. I can't wait to use it. It's still the number 1 selling drainage catheter today. It's been decades. But I had fun doing it. Now what I showed was curiosity, new learning, but it also led to dynamic growth, new creative thinking. And so my career was accelerated by taking the tougher challenges, by taking the products that nobody wanted to work on because they weren't perceived as cool or the big products. So you can actually grow quicker, accelerate your career by taking the things that no one wants.
So raise your hands.
Raise your hand.
Pus.
I chose it. They called me Pus Boy. That was what. And but it was the same with biopsy. But you know, the same thing when you see those patients, you start with the patient on the table, and where our bodies are full of these tubes, and those tubes clog up, you become very sick, deathly sick. And watching how these products works and how it brought relief to those patients mattered to me.
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask you a question before we go post Boston and post Europe and what happened to arrive where we are today. I want to ask you about purpose. We, in my work, we found a predictor of success for leaders where they really got focused and passionate on how they benefited the particular subset of the population we call customers or patients. And yet there's a lot of talk these days about purpose in a different way. In fact, I feel like they've hijacked it a little bit. They talk about profit on one hand first and foremost as the purpose, which doesn't make sense in my research. And then they sometimes skip over the patients and the customers and talk about the global, universal, every human needs that we have on this planet as purpose. Feed the people under the viaduct or save nature. And they don't focus as tightly on the people they serve as you do. Could you give me your thoughts on that and talk a little bit about purpose in that regard?
You know, all those causes are great, and we need to do those things. I guess how I look at your career, and if you were to ask me why I did what I did focus in on a group of patients that I could help. Early on in my career, while I was a peripheral vascular rep, I would set up that room for the case. But next door was this brand new procedure called neurovascular. I had no products for them. But I would go over there, I'd do my case, and then I'd rush over to the room next door and ask the doctor if I could just watch the case. I was so intrigued by it. I loved it. In fact, he'd always say, "Do we have anything we can buy from you? Because you're always here." And he was training me on the anatomy and the steps of the procedure. It was fantastic. But when I saw how the patient's life was saved, and as I was leaving the procedure room and you cut out through the hospital waiting area and I could see that family waiting, I can't say it solved the world's problems, but I could help that mom on the table. And when you look at stroke, and 60 to 65% of all stroke patients are females, more women are impacted by stroke than all female cancers combined. I can't save global warming. Those are great causes. There's all sorts of great causes. Where I chose to focus is picking something where I could make a material difference. And making a material difference in treating the complex disease of stroke and saving all those moms and sisters and aunts on the table and what they do and for their families and how important they are to their loved ones, that mattered most. Now, along the way, we try to do lots of other things. We work on packaging that's more effective for the environment. We try to be more effective in everything that we do to lessen the impact on the earth, but we have to save that stroke patient. And that's what mattered to me. So choose your mission, choose your path, choose your purpose, but you can't boil the ocean. You can't do everything all at once, but you can find a way where you can leave a material impact on patients around the world. And in our case, even in the length of this interview, patients' lives were saved multiple times during the length of this discussion with our products. So we're saving lives, and that's the purpose of what we do.
Wow. Well, another interesting thing that you've told us earlier before the interview, I'd love you to get on tape. So you talked about how these women have strokes so often. And in two essential parts of the definition of purpose for all of us English speakers is that it's a focus. Mm-hmm. By definition, purpose is a little bit focused. And it's also a reason, why we gather here in a company, and in your case in multiple areas across the world, why we gather each day on Zooms together, why we're trying to do the work we're trying to do. And it is the patient in your case. So tell us a little bit about those women and why we don't know that it's such a big problem.
Right.
I was shocked when you told me that. Tell us a little bit about that.
It is, and we don't know why females have more strokes, both hemorrhagic and ischemic. We don't know why. But in every clinical trial, that's sort of the ratio of male versus female. And I remember we had a new product that just got FDA approval. It was one of our biggest product launches in the history of our division. It was a device that pulls clots out of an occluded artery and pulls that clot rapidly and safely out of the body and restores oxygenated blood to the patient. And we were in Boston. And this young mother had thrown a clot while delivering her second child. And they rushed her down to the procedure room. We had just shipped the product to the sales representative. He had it in his car. He rushed out to the car to get the sterile package and rushed back in. And we were waiting for that case to start. I was looking at this young African-American woman who was delivering her second child. I learned while I was waiting, she had a 1-year-old at home. Or sorry, I apologize. She had a 2-year-old at home and just having her second child. And I thought, if she lives, how do you take care of a 2-year-old and a newborn if you can't move the left side of your body? How do you change a diaper? How do you chase after a toddler? And that impact is dramatic. So when I work with our employees in small groups, big groups, we talk about the impact on patients with stroke care. And yes, our challenges are immense in how we design and build these products. Our clinical trials take forever. They're 7 to 8 years to get a PMA level product approved in the United States, and then equivalents in Japan and China and Europe, around the world. But it's worth it. And I tell them, if you don't think saving that mother's life is important to you, then don't work for me. I'll help you get a job in some other division, hips, knees, spine, or another company. But if you're going to work here, guess what we talk about all day long? Devices for stroke, training doctors for stroke, clinical trials for stroke. Everything we talk about is stroke. So if that's not a driving force for you in saving that patient's life, then go work elsewhere.
And you know, this is just my personal experience. It's not a political statement, but the women in my life have always been the glue of the family.
Yeah.
And do you actually get to say that part of your purpose?
I do. In fact, I share personally in my family. If you take out my wife and my mom and my sister and my aunts, my family would stop functioning. So I look at it where yes, we're saving that patient on the table, but we're saving family units around the world. Every time we save that mother and a father, we're saving that family that relies on them. And so you want to help society, save someone who's having a stroke, and treat them in such a way they can go back to work, they can drive a car, they can take care of their loved ones. That saves society.
And boy, is that a great focus, and boy, is that a great reason to gather together.
Well, the majority of stroke patients that survive live in your home. So, but you're now going to be living in your loved one's home with a diminished capacity where you can't swallow, or you can't speak, or you can't feed yourself, or someone needs to clean you. That changes the family dynamic dramatically. And we know if we can get them on the table within a certain time window, we can have an outcome that's so dramatically beneficial to their health care that they can go back to work, they can take care of their families, they can feed themselves, they can clean themselves. That's why it's so important.
Well, I love how it's an example of, when you talk about a deep purpose, it's not broadening it to all of society and the whole planet and in the world. Those are great objectives, and everyone should be working on those overdrive. But to be focused on what we're actually trying to do together, it's really powerful, because you've deepened it by saying, okay, we would probably consider you in wellness or health care or in health itself as your deep purpose, one of the 12 essential needs humans have. But you're saying it's broader than that. It ripples to the family and connections and relationships and practicalities. And those are very deep, if not the deepest reason for us being alive, is our relationships and connections. And so it's very deep, very deep.
Well, and what I find is that passion for the patient and that passion of mission, it's not limited to any one function. Sales, marketing, R&D, clinical,
accounting,
regulatory, quality, HR, they're all in on that mission. And we know that we can't make that product, make it safe and effective, without all of us working together all the time. So we focus there. And another important aspect of this interview is we should probably take 2 minutes and talk a little bit about what the symptoms of stroke are.
Do it.
Most patients, we only treat 25 to 30% of available patients. The reason we do is they're either found at home and it's too late for treatment, they missed that treatment window and their brain has already died, or they've passed away, or they go to the wrong hospital. So I want you to think of the word FAST, F-A-S-T. When someone's having a stroke, half their face will work and the other half will not work. So when your mom says, hey, I feel really weird and odd, I don't feel good, I'm going to go upstairs and lay down, you say, wait a minute, Mom, I want you to look at me and I want you to smile. And half that face will smile and the other half won't. A stands for arm. Arms are almost always involved. It'll just be one arm or the other, it's never both. And it will act differently than normal. It could be shaky, they can't lift it, they can't grip, but something's different, and it will be on the same side of the face that didn't move. S is for speech. Speech is almost always involved. Slurred speech, drunk speech, can't speak, repeated speech, but not normal speech. And then T is for time. You have to know which hospital to go to in your area that's a comprehensive stroke center. That means in your community, you may not go to the hospital where they do appendectomies and do total hips and total knees, you have to go to the hospital that does stroke treatment. Going to the wrong hospital will cost you 3 to 4 hours before they transfer you. In that time window, you could lose the majority of your brain and its capacity. You're losing 2 million neurons a minute. So you want to get to the right hospital and you'll have a great outcome.
Fast. All right, so let's move to the next part of your career. You had tremendous success. You've made these changes we've talked about, and then what? How did you arrive in this stage before and now?
Well, when I was younger, I was a product manager over the pus, urine, and bile products. I had I'd been doing that for a couple of years, and I heard rumor that they were starting a division to go into neurovascular. And if you remember earlier in my story, I used to go watch those procedures. I physically ran in Natick, Massachusetts, through the building as fast as I could to the president of the company and said, burst in his office and said, hey, I heard we're going to start a division for neuro. I want to be the first neuro product manager. And he said, okay, we are, and yeah, you're it. So there's a little bit more to the story than that, but that's a true story of me physically running, and I was so excited. So I had this passion about neurovascular, and I didn't want to give up on that opportunity. I wanted to be the first one. I wanted to make that happen.
I just have to say that you coming out of sales, you have 6 months. If someone is curious in any way and they touch our company, and if we don't respond within 5 minutes, the probability of getting a success just falls off a cliff. And so here you are. You hear there's something involved with that curiosity. You've been poking your head across the hall in, and you sprint.
I ran.
And you get to the top. It seems like it was a little bit of a sales background that helped you
there.
Well,
for sure. Hey, sales is always involved. How you position yourself, how you position your thoughts, your thinking, really matters. It doesn't matter what function you're in or what level you are. You're always selling an idea, a notion, a concept to someone to change their heart and mind. And in my case, it turned out to be stroke. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Being on the groundwork of the very first earliest products for stroke care. And we had to figure it out, doctors and the company side. It was fantastic. And I look back at that and I cherish those years. Never easy. We look back at it now and say, oh, it all worked. It's a $4 billion industry. But in the early days, I had surgeons pat me on the head and shoo me out of their office and say, this stuff's never going to work. Where today, 80 to 95% of all aneurysms in a hospital is treated less invasively.
Wow.
When we started, it was 0.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'm going to talk to you about your next little adventure that's big. But let's finish this. So how did you arrive where you are? What have you accomplished? Put your modesty aside and tell us how and what you've accomplished today.
With the neurovascular division?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've done some amazing things. I'm really proud of my team and what we were able to achieve. We ran clinical trials that used our products, but were for the benefit of mankind. One of our most important trials we did to date was called DAWN, D-A-W-N, the DAWN study. While we were treating these patients who were having strokes from clots that had moved into their brains, the thinking then was your brain, for the last 100 years, every doctor in the world would say your brain's dead at about 6 hours. Sometimes we'd push that window to 8 hours. And that was our initial indication. That was our clinical trial, and we launched the Trevo device to grab clots and pull it out of your head. But along the way, we would have these doctors that would pull you aside at a meeting, or they'd give me a call and they'd say, hey, I just treated this 80-year-old man, and it was way outside the window. His last time seeing well was like 15 hours ago. But he was a beloved surgeon at the hospital. His parents were, his family was begging me. His wife was there. I said, okay, we'll do this procedure, but there probably won't be a change or a good outcome. And I pulled out this clot, and this 80-year-old surgeon had a full and complete recovery. So I started hearing these stories that were way outside the window. So we started to organize with 2 key opinion leading doctors in our space, and we designed this study to go out to 24 hours. It's also important to note that many people wake up with strokes. We don't know why. but they wake up with stroke. So you don't know when they had the stroke. Was it 10 minutes ago or 6 hours ago? So a lot of these patients weren't getting treated because we would have to stay within the FDA guideline of the treatment window. So we went out to 24 hours and we took all comers. And we had a significant outcome from that study. The results were so profound that it stopped every trial on earth because it would be no longer ethical to treat them in a study because this outcome was so profound. And it changed guidelines in 70 countries around the world. We now go out to 24 hours. We've done other studies along the way that are very similar in regards to imaging of which patients can have the greatest effect. But again, these studies have changed guidelines. I'm very, very proud of that. I'm very proud of our coil. We've now treated over 2 million patients around the world with a great outcome. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of how we train our doctors. I'm very proud of the quality system that we have that makes our products so reliable in the surgeon's hand. I'm very proud of the ethics of our division, how our employees act, and that we do things for the right reasons, the right way, which in the medical device world is paramount because you have to start with that patient on the table. I'm just very grateful for all the things we've been able to achieve because it changed healthcare. You know, a little kid from a suburb of Salt Lake City that was nothing special. I think anybody can do that. Yeah. If they just stay focused and become curious and driven by mission, I think you can go change some things out there in the world.
I'm fascinated by all the locations. Rattle off some of the locations that exist in your company or division.
For my division, we make, our headquarters are in Fremont, California. Our headquarters are still there. We have a factory here that's quite large in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a sister factory in Cork, Ireland. We have sales offices in all 70 countries, but we also have very big operations in Amsterdam where we have our international and European marketing folks, and we're now building up India, where we're building up a training center and an R&D team there as well. So we'll just continue to expand as our customers' needs expand.
Amazing. It's amazing. Okay, in a minute we're going to talk about your, whatever you describe your retirement as. I'll let you describe it. But before we get there, you're still on the job. You've got a couple weeks left, so you've got to still do this job. So as a president or a leader of a large group like you are, I want to talk to you about some of the team and leadership aspects. And I'm really curious which direction you would like to start first. For example, would you rather start even in a chronological general leadership situation with the individual and the teams? Or would you like to go all the way out to vision and come back to mission, etc.? Like, where would you like to start, Mr. Successful Leader?
Well, I can tell you what I've observed over the years.
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure this out, but it's a true principle. I've seen it work in 70 countries, so it's not determined by culture or language or religion or location on the earth. When you have a group of people who are dedicated to a mission or a purpose that's larger than themselves, and you love who you work with, great things happen, even really difficult things, because they work together so well. And I can show you with our Gallup scores. Stryker is very believing in Gallup surveys. And I can show you my best performing teams, and I can show you my least performing teams. When it comes down to it, I can tell you, even before we do that, who's all in on the mission of that product to treating that patient on the table and how well they get along with each other. In other words, they're best friends. That dynamic creates the best outcomes of anything I've ever seen. And it does, and I see it in Korea. I see it in China. I see it in France. I see it in England. I see it in Boston. I see it in Denver. When you see these teams come together with that passion and that commitment to mission, and they really enjoy working with each other, these great things happen. If they're not all in on the mission, they quit. They're just not into it. Or if they don't get along, there doesn't seem to be capacity or energy to solve complex problems.
Yeah. Let me ask you something about that. So, it sounded like in one part of that description you said their product. So, if you have multiple products, doesn't matter, you're saying, what the product is. If you believe in what you're trying to accomplish with that product, just the measure of how much they believe in accomplishing that, the mission of that product specifically, can tell you how successful
when they
that
speak
team.
to the product like it's one of their children, I know where they are in their mental cycle. And we're chasing the mission of complete stroke care, but there's multiple products that are used together to improve that procedure and the outcome for the patient. You can't develop all those products at one time. It takes years. So you have people working on guide wires and people working on coils and flow diverting stents and different ways to remove clots from the body. They each have their own unique, I guess you could call it a submission or a role to play within that broader mission. But we know they're all enabling one to another. So we have that new flow diverting stent over here, but this team's working on that delivery system. Once we get that right, we can have better outcomes over here with the implant. So they're very interconnected, but they take complete ownership. And when you see that, the team works on it with passion like I've never seen before.
And so each team has its own target, but it's a wave together of these new innovations that you're putting out into the market.
They work as waves because clinical trials can take a long time, 5 to 8 years per clinical trial. So they literally work like waves as you bring things to the marketplace and they treat patients. Now, we are a growth company. We're a growth engine within that company. We're a growth stock. We talk about those things, but we always talk about patient on the table first. Mission to treat that patient, a product to treat those patients. Those sales and the sales and revenues and profit margins, they'll come over time. And we have folks that take care of a lot of those things for us to make sure we do them effectively and efficiently. But if we don't get this right, none of those things happen. So you always start with mission and patient first.
Well, and you also said, very interestingly, I think, you also said that you're not just looking for people that come to work and are civil, and you're going past camaraderie to an esprit de corps, it sounds like, where I've got your back in the foxhole, kind of. Is there a way that you generate that? Is it just hiring? I mean, how do you get that esprit de corps on a team?
I invite them to join the mission. So I meet with every group of new employees. I've been doing it for 15 years. And I talk about, there's 3 different, I make it really simple. I know that there's different ways to measure in employees and how they perform over time. I keep it really simple. There's 3 levels. Level 1 employees are terrible. They're not in on the mission and they don't get along with others and they're just checking the boxes to get a paycheck. I don't want that level of employee to feel welcome at all in my division because they're not effective and nobody wants to work with them. Now, we have tons of level 2s. Level 2s are great employees. They're off the chart great. They want to do a great job. They're in on the mission. They want to get promoted. They want their bonuses. They want the product to succeed. But there's this, when you get the right thing I've described between passion to mission and you love your friends, you get this heart and mind thing that's very different. I call them level 3 employees. And it doesn't matter what function you're in. It doesn't matter what level you are in the company. I have employees stop me in the hallway and say, I want you to know I'm a level 3 off the chart. I'm above a level 3. But those employees change companies and they deliver results consistently over time. They're not short-term thinkers. They don't come into a company and stay for 2 years and then jump to the next. They stay 5, 10, 15. I have employees now 35 years. They're fabulous, but they want to be that person that delivered over time. So when I meet with the new employees, I tell them stories of level 1s and 2s and 3s. I give them examples of each. And I say, you know what's amazing about that? Is you get to choose. It's a choice. It isn't us, it's you. So you get to choose what level of employee you want to be. But if you're level 1, I don't want you sticking around very long. Level 2 will take you, but level 3 is where you change things and you have this career that will be mind-boggling fantastic. But you get to choose. So I say, when I see you next, I'm going to ask you, what level are you aiming for? What level do you want to become? And I've already talked about making friends for life. So I've already introduced myself. I already know where they're from, their backgrounds. I try to memorize all that. And then when I see them, I'll look at them, give them a smile, and they'll say, I'm aiming for level 3. I'm a 2 now, but I'm going to 3. And so to me, it's a personal choice. You get to choose to make your company better by your own behaviors. You choose to make your teammates better because you're there. You choose to do your part and to look how you can help them to do their part. It's a choice to help solve problems when they're really, really hard and not give up. You choose to make the world better. It's all personal choice. Don't look for excuses. Don't blame others. What's your role in all this? And is the team better because you're on the team or not? Only the individual can look in the mirror and make that determination.
So you invite them to make the choice.
I invite them to make that choice.
And you invite them to help achieve the target of the mission and to be a team player to the extent that they love each other.
That's right. And our people stay for years, decades. I think my senior staff has stayed for decades together. So we demonstrate it not just in words, but by our own behaviors.
Okay. Well, a couple more things. We'll let you go home. First, you're on this path. You've pursued saving stroke victims and some aneurysms. And you are ending the path here. But if you look to the future and you look several years out and you're to see a scene of helping those patients and you see your own vision. I realize the new leader will have his own vision or her own vision. But what do you see for this division of Stryker going that far out? What do you see?
I was there at the very beginning when the first procedure started. I've led the last 15 years of my 31 career as president. I actually think we're just getting started. I think the golden era is right now. It's just starting. I'm sorry that I'm the guy aging out while this is happening. For the first time, we can build and design at nano levels that we only dreamed about decades ago. I'm watching imaging of how we look at the brain and how imaging attaches to the devices. Mind-boggling effective. We're seeing robotic assist technologies coming in. We're seeing artificial intelligence coming in. So it probably is not 3 years out, but it's not 10 years out. Probably 4 to 5 to 6 years out, you're starting to see convergence of technologies that will change everything that we do. Not just in neurovascular, but for shoulders and hips and knees and spines, where you're going to see a convergence of digital tools, artificial intelligence, imaging, devices, robotic assist will all converge to make new products significantly better than what we do today. Now, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be mind-boggling, exciting to watch. So all those things are in place within our vision and our mission. Those things are all moving and happening in different forms and shapes. Some of those things will succeed, some of those things will fail. But it's going to be exciting. That's why I've had other public forums where I've talked about we're in the golden era of the medical device industry, and we're certainly in the golden era of neurovascular.
Wow, that's exciting. That's an exciting vision.
It's a great outcome for patient care. Now the challenge will be those things are going to cost more money, and we have the greatest population entering healthcare ever before in the history of Earth. The baby boomers are all retiring in all 70 countries. So you have all these patients coming into healthcare systems. How are we going to pay for this as governments and as societies? It's going to be costly. So we have to figure out how do we develop these technologies, but also make it more cost effective and have better outcomes. So in healthcare and medical devices, it's never easy. But I'm so confident and believing and optimistic that we're going to figure that out.
Well, and you're not old enough to retire, but you are. And you're going on to the next thing. And it relates to the education and the solving of some of those problems. So tell us a little bit about that before we end.
Well, I'm retiring from Stryker, but not retiring from working. I've decided to take a position at the University of Utah Medical Center to be the director of the Center of Medical Innovation, where we work with physicians that have medical device ideas across the full spectrum, and engineering students and business students and legal students, and forming small startup companies to bring those technologies from a design on the back of an envelope all the way through to a real medical device that could be prepared to transition to a startup or to a strategic organization to make it a real product. And my belief is over time, as we age, we innovate less. The younger generation innovates better and quicker. The kids that are born and are in college today, their whole life has been centered on innovation. They expect innovation. They have innovation in every form of their life. I think this next generation is going to develop more innovations than anything we can ever imagine. So what I believe is people in more my position and phase of life should share the wisdom that we've learned along this path with the generation that's coming that are innovators. And I think by that convergence, I can make the world a better place. And that's what I want to work and develop the next generation of innovators for the medical device industry.
And it sounds like you have a great support at that university that's willing to go along.
University of Utah is incredible. The physicians are incredible. The deans of each of the colleges are amazing. I think all the pieces are in place on that campus to make a really amazing program.
Yeah. They love to build buildings and facilities to do interesting things.
That's right. Sure. It's a great campus.
Wow. This is an exceptional piece of leadership, this description and this recording. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope it helps someone.
So much.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.